Look at that, Chuck. We got our proper uniforms on. I don't have my name on mine. So your man's getting some big mud holes in it, brother. Almost had to lock it in. Well, there she is. We were just asking about you. Never shows up.
I'm pretty sure we're live. We are going to get started on our third budget workshop. Going to hand it over to Ms. Randy King and David Edwards.
Yes, Commissioners, thank you. This is our final budget workshop for the 22-23 budget cycle. Before we get started in the actual slides, I wanted to go over one of the attachments that went out in the workshop agenda that were the line item changes to the budget, just very quickly. These were all related to the sheriff's budget and the reallocation between the different departments such as law enforcement, corrections, bailiff, and so that didn't change their overall budget. It just reallocated in the sheriff's fund where that money was, except for $320 additional dollars. So I wanted to discuss that. I do have some other pending changes.
What was the purpose?
The purpose is Jan had to make all these calculations for this new salary that was passed by the state on the fly, and after she had more time to analyze that, she went back and she had to wiggle some in between departments.
Nothing to do with shutting down ICE or nothing like that?
Nothing to do with that, it's just she had the time to finalize those numbers. So there are some additional pending budget changes related to some insurance rates that we just received back, and we found one error in the MSBU fund of about $40,000 that I wanted to get through this workshop because this has already been sent out, and then at our first budget hearing on September 6th, we'll go over what those changes are as well. So you're gonna do the clicker ball.
All right.
We kind of ran out of time at our last workshop, so basically I kind of wanted to rehash the things that we were talking about that had to do with the rates that our taxpayers will see on their trim notices. So first we'll start off with our millage rate. Our taxable value, as we talked about, we have had an increase. And so that shows you some historical information there, and that is going to be what we calculate our ad valorem revenue on. Regardless of what that rate is, that taxable value is what we're going to use to calculate what we're going to bring in revenue. And I wanted to point out what our current rollback rate is because I don't think we talked about it at the second budget workshop. It's 7.5370. Our proposed budget includes a millage rate of 8.2. That is quite a significant variance in revenue that we bring in. At the rollback rate, you're talking about $12.6 million versus the 8.2 millage rate, you're talking about 13.7. So there's a large gap there, and we can talk about where that goes. The majority of it is going to be sloughed off to our constitutional officers. Our sheriff is going to get about $930,000 of that because of the additional deputies and the things that are going on there. And then all of our other four offices are anywhere between $40,000 to $120,000 in increase. So if we stay with this 8.2 proposed millage rate, it will get us about $1.7 million additional revenue over the current year budget. But like I said, $1.4 million of that total is going off to the constitutional officers.
Up for them to increase service.
Increase services,
Mandates.
increase salaries to stay in tandem with what the BOCC is doing, make sure we have all of our staff that hits that statutory $15 an hour rate by the time that becomes law. And so there are many reasons in their offices. I think they're all here except for the sheriff, but Jane's here. So if you have specific questions about their budgets, what's going on in their office, if you want to call them up or if any of them would like to speak voluntarily, I don't see any hands, but Greg?
His hand was up, don't worry.
He raised his hand.
Yes, he did.
Oh, I have an awesome joke. Maybe later. So anyway, I thought this might be the perfect time for you or the board to discuss how you feel about this proposed millage rate, ask any additional questions.
Like my personal, on my house, like any other homeowner, my tax bill should be roughly what it was last year, other than the 3%, that it can go up, the value of my home can go up.
Roughly, in a very generic statement, yes.
The increased revenue is from growth, new houses and new construction, most of it.
56% of it is from existing values, and 44% of it is from new construction. And those dollar amounts are $950,000 and $736,000 respectively.
So that's all that 3%?
The 3% cap,
For businesses, it's 10%.
Gotcha.
Yes, the caps.
So that's increase in value of existing homes generated extra 700,
900.
900.
And then the new construction generated the 700. So it's this fiscal year that we're talking about next year, it's a 56%, 44% split. And that will change,
So the increase will be 3%, homeowners,
yes.
which is not a very, based on the millage rate, will be a large increase in property.
No, and it's the same principle as any other tax rate. If you buy a TV and it costs $250, you pay 7%. If you buy it and it costs $300, you're still paying that same rate, you're just buying a more expensive TV. Same principle. Anybody? Because we're going to move through this pretty quickly to the individual rates, unless you want to come back to the millage rate letter, have us do, our conversation.
I just want us to be conscious of time, Randy, because we need to be done about 4:45-ish, 10 till 5-ish.
Yes.
What about me?
Okay. So then, if that's the case, we can move along to our fire budget. So we talked about the additional FTEs on the fire trucks. So that's 3 people on one of 3 shifts. And so these are split with the general fund, so the total effect doesn't necessarily all hit the fire budget, but it is something to be aware of because we are adding services and adding staff on here, as well as some one-time purchases for bunker gear. I wanted to go back and give a little history of the MSBU to tell you where we were and how we got here. It was originally adopted in 1985 at $15 an hour, $15 for a residential dwelling unit. In 1995, it went to $35. In 2006, it went to $65. In 2010, it dropped back to $61, and at that time, we had a study prepared by GSG that justified a rate of $191. That was in 2010. In 2014, it went to $75. In 2015, it went to $80. And then in 2017, we did another look at our apportionment and all of those things, and we had a workshop specifically on the MSBU. And the outcome of that was that it went to $99. And looking back at that workshop at that time, staff actually recommended that we can go to this rate, but each year we're going to need to have a CPI on this particular assessment in order to keep up with the growth of expenses. And then in 1920, we went to 102, so we applied that CPI. And then, of course, last year we did an updated study as well, and brought us to our current rate of 149. So this year, we're again proposing, go to the next slide, please.
I think a lot of that can be attributed to the decline in volunteer firefighters.
It absolutely can. When we originally implemented this assessment back in the day, we were structured completely different from how we're structured now. We relied heavily on volunteers. It is flipped, and now we rely heavily on the career staff, and our volunteer program is basically non-existent.
Training requirements.
The state regulations and what has to be done in order to be considered a legitimate active volunteer is frankly a burden most people really don't want to take up in their lives. So we are requesting to use that CPI rate, and our residential dwelling units, of course, bring in the majority of our MSBU revenue, so that proposed rate in the budget that we submitted to you is $152 per dwelling unit. And I want to say this because we hammer this, but these things have got to happen pretty regularly each year, or we're going to get back to the point where we have to go from 102 to 149. And just let you know that back in 2010, so 12 years ago, we had a study that justified a rate double what we had, more than double at the current time. So any questions or comments about the MSBU rate? I'm not in charge of the meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at Ralph. Come on up, Ed. I thought I saw his hand.
I would like to point out that some of the change that we're implementing in our office is going to affect this. And it's your call what you do with it, but one of the things we're doing is we're beginning to identify properties that have a salvage type facility, a mobile home that the roof is, trees falling in and they're not going to fix it. We're identifying them as salvage. I'm calling it salvage, gives it no value as far as property tax goes. But I understand your folks are putting a fire tax on that thing, which is fine. That's your call. That's their call. But I just wanted to point that out. You're probably going to start getting some complaints about that. And I'm very open about all I'm doing is saying what's there, giving it a zero value. And it's your call as to whether
If
something that's salvage should still get a fire.
If they remove that derelict structure, they don't pay the fire tax,
That's
right?
correct. Yes, it's gone. It's gone.
And they burn down just like anything.
I understand. All right. Good encouragement to get
This, and also this fund, as you know, each one of these funds, we run performance on them. We update those performances and we do projections on these. Currently, this fund is skipping along it's going to lose money for the next 3 or 4, probably the next 3 years is the way the performer works. And that's even assuming, that's based on the study and based on the increases that we're going to have. That's, next year we're looking at possibly, according to how things work out, about a 3% CPI increase. Just from a standpoint of trying to keep the fund above water. We're not making any money, we're not losing much. We're already much. We're declining in fund balance a little bit. It's nothing scary yet, but it can get scary if we don't watch it.
Now, on the positive side, what Ed said, we did add a new category, right, specifically for like farm,
Yes.
Yes.
whole barn structure.
Industrial.
That we're getting taxed pretty heavily on fire tax.
Right, and we've made all those adjustments and we feel good about our collections and what we're doing, and we're doing it fairly, and Ed's office is working with us on that, so.
But that was a big thing, adding that extra category between commercial and residential.
Yeah, so it's being as distributed as fairly as it can be.
Yeah, and the fund balance is about $470,000, and that is at the very bottom of where it needs to be. And as the expenses go up each year, that fund balance target goes up with it. And so that's what we have to be mindful, because if this fund gets in trouble, we will have to subsidize it with the general fund. In addition, in this fund, there is a transfer out of the MSBU into the general fund for doing the things that HR and payroll and cutting checks and all that stuff. So that's something that we look at very carefully at the end of each year to see, can this fund stand it? But it is a legitimate expense for the MSBU, and so we have to get ourselves there where we can bump along and stay at our minimum fund balance as well as sustain that transfer.
What percentage of the total fire rescue is paid for out of the fire MSBU? Because the ambulance does not have an MSBU.
That's
It has
correct.
fees, and then the general fund pays for it, right?
So you're talking about 62% is on the general fund, 38% is on the MSBU, and we can back that up with time diary studies and things, and those are things that we look at every so often to make sure. And obviously, since this is restricted funding, we want to be conservative, so we might even be able to put 44% on there, but we stay conservative because we don't want to over-assess people. We we want to stay right where we need to be, keep that fund balance, and just keep watching this fund as we go through the years.
We were looking at what, 14,500 that pay the MSBU.
Yes, there's, on the special assessment roll, it was 15,397. And so with this fund, you really don't see from $3 a rate increase, you realize an extra $43,000 roughly, but that $43,000 keeps you bumping along where you don't drop below that minimum fund balance.
Institutional pays nothing, right?
Institutional is 20 cents per square foot, but if they are exempt, then they don't pay anything. Yes, that's correct.
Is that
But like
institutional or industrial?
Do what?
Is that institutional or industrial for the 20 cents?
Institutional. Oh, I'm sorry, 13.
But also, I realize there's a portion of it that the general fund we have to make up as well.
Are there any questions about the proposed MSBU rate? Any comments you guys want to discuss? If not,
Well, one of the things I want to discuss is what I've already told you about. There was two things that when I was looking at the budget that I really wanted us to put on hold this year, and one was the MSBU and the sewer increase. And I understand we had to make a lot of adjustments this past year, but with the current numbers, I was trying to figure out, because MSBU was around 43,500, and then, of course, the solid waste is built-in contract, so there's not a whole lot on that. But we're also looking at, we did an increase last year, made some adjustments on everything, and people having a hard time. And here we are fixing to try to do it all again. And I don't know how we're going to keep doing that. I say that I wanted to try to wait on these two items. Can't do anything about the garbage that's going to go up from $200 to $4. So, that's 13 cents a month, which is in their contract. But these are two things I figured out that let's wait and see what the next year, because if you look at the 5-year plan that they had done, we get better and better every year. So why not hold off on a year and see where we're going to stand out with the new public spending there? I know some of the stuff might have to come out of general fund, but this is two of the things I think we can help cut a break on people, especially what Ed was saying, if with a possible 3% increase on your house being re-looked at. So I didn't know if this was the proper time to talk about it, but that's my 2 cents about it.
So you want to talk about the MSBU, Waste Pro, and what was the other thing?
Well, Waste Pro, they have a built-in contract, which it was built in anyway, so obviously we got a contract, so I was going to leave Waste Pro out, but what I was looking at is the MSBU and the sewer.
Okay, well, let's let Brandon go into sewer, and I'll make a mental note so we can have some discussion.
yeah, we're going to talk about sewer and then Waste Pro as well.
So you want to go to sewer, you want to talk about MSBU while we're here?
We want to talk about, well, are you done talking about it?
Yeah.
He's done talking about it, so we need to go to sewer.
Okay.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot to say about our sewer. Those rates were already approved by you in December, but I did put them back in front of you so that you can see that the residential base rate is going to go from 3809 to 3904, and then the per 1,000 gallons over 2,000 gallons is going to go from 572 to 586. So most people are going to see a $6 to $7, depending on how much they use, increase in their sewer bill.
We did that, if I remember right, so we could fund rehab of historic lift stations. We went ahead and upped it up a little more so we could start doing some maintenance items that have been neglected for years and years and years.
That is correct, and as well as the coverage of our debt service. So those are things, when we did our Raftella study, we didn't have what we needed to have in our sewer budget, and that's why we made those rate changes and everything. And so the resolution that you approved in December actually escalated those rates out and has them in the resolution for the next 5 years.
That
So,
was part of the loan, if I remember correctly, our debt ratio and whatever.
yes,
Yes.
Again, we got lift stations in Panacea built in 1987 that,
And we've been doing 3 to 4 a year, and that's making a big difference. But as we said before, we're running these programs, and we have these performers and we've historically tried to run CPIs to keep away from the one big bulk 10% increase. And the problem is with as much stuff that is increasing now, as prices of chemicals and stuff like that, the wastewater system especially, it is expensive what we do. We're one of the few counties that actually perform that go to the 3.3 or the 5.531. And that is very, very, very expensive. And it's you discount it 1 year, and next year you're looking at 6 to 8% increase the next year.
Mike, I understand what you're saying, but I'm a strong advocate that it should pay for itself, basically. It should be run as an enterprise fund. I know we can't do that.
Well, and that's
Whatever fire service cost is what we should charge.
and how we straightened all this out was every fund initially, when I first came in here, and Greg and myself and Brandy, every fund at that time they all intermingled. And meaning this one, it was running shy, so let's take from this one and this one, and this one was running shy, so it was all messed up and we were about broke. We fixed that. Every fund runs as a business now. I know that's an evil term in the government, but it runs as a business now. So it stands alone, so it doesn't have to depend on that. Because when you start, say you just said the general fund can take it, that's starting of that bad science again. That starts that bad stuff. Everyone has to stand on their business. As a business, they have to stand up, and then cost increases. Look at duct line pipe, $648 a foot.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the recent bids are 3 times higher than they were a year ago. So this is serious.
Yeah, it's serious, and we're no different. We're like everybody else. The loaf of bread went up. We have to, our costs go up as well. So I understand what you're saying. I wish there was a way, but on all these, we set them up to run as a business, and they're having to survive on their own, and they're getting cost increases and we're not making money at this. All we're doing is saying, hey, we want to run this, so we're not saving the people's money. That's not our job to save their money. We're running it just where we keep enough in the bank to operate it.
Just for the public, the $6 to $7, is that a month or a year?
That'll be a month
Thank
based
you.
on their usage.
You're all sewer.
If you're on sewer. If you're not on sewer, you will not
About an average of
get it off.
$119 a year total for everything if you're on sewer, and about $110 if you're not, an average.
Any more questions, discussion?
If you're not on sewer.
Look, 110 if you are on sewer.
Right, I'm sorry.
117 if you're, then you have everything.
There you go.
The whole entire increase between sewer, if you were on sewer, solid waste, and MSBU is 117 roughly based on your sewer bill. If you're not on sewer, it's $7 a year. Go to your
That's $2 difference.
solid waste. Now, let's go talk about our solid waste, our current, go back to the one. Our current, no, you went the wrong way, but that's fine. Our current residential assessment is $200. We're requesting to propose, you do have it all messed up.
How many years was it, 199?
It was 196, and I was gonna go back on some history here as well.
History, yes.
We originally implemented this solid waste assessment.
David.
Press some buttons.
Down. Down.
Yeah, you know how I feel. That's how it treats me too.
Are we on page 5, or are we going backwards now?
We're supposed to be on page 9.
We're going to page 9 now. Okay.
Yes, this is our solid waste budget. Right there. We can go right there. So this assessment was originally implemented in October 2011 at $196. per residential unit. At the time, we were paying Waste Pro $166.53 per account. And as you can imagine, over the years, that has grown to the point where the Waste Pro rate is now $183.84 per account for next fiscal year. So that only allows us like $12 between the $196 that we originally implemented and the current rate. So what we have to do, and Waste Pro doesn't get all of that assessment, but they get most of it. But then we do things like fund Keep Wakulla County Beautiful with the rest of it. And then we do have some minor facilities issues and things that we take care of at the landfill. So there are other expenses the county has, plus the debt payment, that we have to have a gap between what we pay Waste Pro and what we collect for the assessment to pay for those other items. So that is part of the reason why we're proposing to increase this to 204. And this is another fund that we're just bumping along at the bottom. We've got some liability on there right now in that closure loan. We'll keep watching this, and if we don't need to go up 2 or 3%, we might, but I think the pro forma shows that we probably will, at least until the closure loan is paid off. So.
And what we're trying to do here is as you said, and I've commented on this one in the past, is what we're looking to do with this one is the math from the payback says you can continue to charge large increases. All right, but the problem is as soon as that loan's paid off, you're all of a sudden flush with cash. So what we've tried to do over time is keep it at where it's at, where it was at the 196, and as Waste Pro got the increases and we had other increases, all we did is their price increased, what our amount that we were getting out of it decreased. That's how we increased their increase to keep it the same. So what we're trying to do is pace this thing out so that when this loan is paid off, we're not sitting on $1 million worth of taxpayers' dollars and we're sitting there saying, wow, look how great we are. We just saved a bunch of money and that made no sense. So what we're trying to do is keep it bumping on the bottom, but what's happening here is Waste Pro is going to be increasing 3%, which y'all did a very brilliant thing when you negotiated with Waste Pro. You sealed off the CPI at 3%. Right now that CPI is up around 6%. So it could be a whole lot worse than what it is. But what we're asking for, the performance says, Waste Pro can increase 3%, but we need to increase 2%. That's all. To keep bumping along the bottom, and that's all we're trying to do here. We've got programs now. We've got other programs that we need to pay for out there. We need to create more room out there for other disposals at the other places in bins and stuff like that. And we're saving for that, but it's not a huge amount of money that we're saving at this.
Is your monitoring budget have MedArt being taken off?
Right now it's still in there, but we're taking it off. That will be a part of it.
In the monitoring, this is combined the solid waste operating with the DEP grant funds, so your monitoring is paid from your DEP grant funds as well as your hazardous waste fees, but Keep Wakulla County Beautiful, that comes out of your operating revenue. And it was 10 years before we changed that rate as well. So when we originally implemented it, it was just recently that we went to the $200. So this is only the second rate increase we've had in 12 years of having the solid waste assessment. And it's going to bring in roughly $55,000 for the households that are paying it. There's a variance between your number of residential dwelling units for solid waste and fire due to our multifamily dwelling units. They're assessed commercially by Waste Pro, so our number of people that pay the assessment is a little lower, but at the end of the day, if this proposed rate passes, it's about $55,000 additional revenue.
$56,800.
You got it.
And of the 200 or 204, if that's what gets approved, 90% of that is Waste Pro, and the other 10% is some change, goes to the county to operate the system. And that was the balance, because before it was more like an 80-20 split, but we figured the performer said at about 10% we could do what we needed to do and not overpay, not over-reserve. But then, because like I said, as soon as that loan's paid off, we're flush with cash. And we can possibly lower down, but we also got things we need to be doing out.
When is the loan expected to be paid off?
I think that's in 28. 28.
More years.
Yeah.
9 more years.
Oh, it's further than 20.
Now, the transfer is the transfer, your pro share.
Yes, the cost allocation to the general fund plus $100,000 to the road fund, so we can hire some people that are working the road and clean up the roadside, so.
Which is where, if we're gonna do that, that's where it needs to come out of. That's what it's all around.
Are you allowed to touch the clicker now?
No, we have,
Jessica, can you go to the next one?
We have 600 residential dwellings that are not included because they're apartment complexes.
They are assessed commercially by Waste Pro, so multifamily dwelling units like the one right there at Trice Lane, what is that, not Bridlegate, you know where I'm
Camelot.
something like that. All of those, instead of having an individual can, most of them have a commercial dumpster. Waste Pro bills the management of the apartment complex directly, and that does not pass through the county, other than the fact that Waste Pro returns a portion of their commercial fees to us for the franchise fees. But they're not assessed as an individual residential dwelling unit.
So why are they included in the residential and not in the commercial in that listing of the fire assessment?
Because the fire assessment is on each residential dwelling unit, so each apartment on its own has its own fire assessment.
Okay.
Jess, can you go one more?
Correction, that was 7 years, not 9.
We did the math. He didn't make a mistake.
Yeah, 28.
Just held up too many fingers.
I just updated it.
So this is the last slide that I have to present, and then this will be for you board discussion. But we talked about this at the last workshop, I removed your statutorily required functions, nonprofit agencies. So these are just the nonprofit agencies that have requested funding from the BOCC, but there's no legal or regulation requirement for us to provide these services or fund these agencies, but they have requested them, and I believe we have representatives from most of the organizations here today. Your two new ones this year are going to be the Wakulla Teen Center and the North Florida Medical Center. Your other previously existing funding agencies, our Senior Center has asked for an increase, and Mr. John's here as well, and then Keep Wakulla County Beautiful has asked for an increase. And so if you would like to talk about any of these things specifically, we can ask these representatives to come up and speak to you about their funding requests.
Which one of these provides a service that otherwise we would have to provide? I know the senior center does with transportation, right?
Senior Center does,
We Care does.
We Care?
We Care does, Red Cross does somewhat, and Keep Wakulla County Beautiful does a lot of the hazardous waste day and the roadside cleanup, forest
So the
cleanup.
two new ones,
Wouldn't be required to do those, but
and I don't, not disparaging anybody, just filled out a form, right?
they completed the application
The
request.
VFW
and
fill out a form?
Submitted all that, no, they did not.
They could though.
They could have, and they did not.
The Florida Wild Mammal Association, could they fill out the form?
They could.
Is there any another number of lists of nonprofit organizations that could fill out the form?
There, as long as they have a 501c3 determination letter from the IRS and submit the required documentation, they could fill out. the
Men's
form.
Club could fill it out.
Men's Club, if they were a
Okay.
nonprofit, they sure
There
could.
sure are. So maybe I'll ask for $10,000 in funding too.
So,
They say no.
Well, my point is all these other ones provide a service that we would otherwise have, and I'm not disparaging the teen center or the North Florida Medical Center, but at some point we gotta draw a line. Otherwise, again, I don't know how many times VFW's been here and asked to have the roof repaired, and the board says, no, we're not getting involved in that, and I mean, I'm not gonna be here, but how are you gonna turn down every other nonprofit that comes out here if you just approve everyone that fills out a form. There's just no rhyme or reason to it. If there's a return on investment of somehow, it's documented, but I'm inclined for neither one of these, to be honest with you.
Well, since they're both here, we're going to hear from them.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Travis?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Travis Coker. Hear me okay? Travis Coker, I'm the Director of Operations for North Florida Medical Centers. Sir, since you mentioned return on investment, I'd be glad to talk about that. This is part of a program that the state of Florida has been involved in and doing since about 2006. And the reality is, with that $10,000 in funding, with what we can get, what we call federal matching funds, we're able to turn that into about $25,000.
For Wakulla County.
For Wakulla County, yes, sir. What that is going to do is help us hire staff. As everybody in the room can attest, hiring staff is difficult. We have raised wages across the board everywhere because we have to. With the minimum wage that's being bumped up.
Who do you serve?
We serve everybody that shows up.
Goes up to where?
Oh, sorry.
At the medical center. I'm sorry. It's Panacea Medical Center right across the street from the mini mall, from Crumbs.
Okay.
Yeah, that medical office.
Does work?
Okay, no, not
You said
there.
Panacea.
That is across from Crumbs.
That was how Rhodey Strickland used to be Rhodey and his mama's house.
Okay.
I still don't understand where it's at.
Well, it's right across the street from Crumbs mini mall, that medical office. But what we do is primary care. We see over 1,000 patients at that one location, 1,000 individual patients. And the reality is about half of those are what's called slide fee patients. Our organization is a 501c3. We do get a federal grant that helps us get the doors open, but just like everybody else, we got to make money or we go out of business. Of those 1,000 patients, about 50% are slide fee. We require, as a federal grantee, a great deal of financial information. We see taxes, income statements, those type of things, to determine where they're on the slide fee. They're able to come to the doctor and see a doctor for as little as $10 a visit.
What's the difference between your organization and the other one that's across from Crumbs Mini Mall? What is that called? The Panacea?
That's the Mike's Marine.
Save him.
Huh?
This is him.
That's what I asked, if that's the one Dr. King used to work at.
Yes, I don't know if Dr. King worked there.
Dr. King works in
so.
Alfredville.
Yeah, but they also worked there for a while, am I right? Somebody help me out here.
No, he's talking about Dr. King that works off of
The doctors that we've had in the last 5 years since I've been there was, oh Lord, I can't believe I just went blank.
Barclay.
Yeah, Dr. Bartley, Dr. Karen Bartley.
At least I know where you're at.
Yeah, okay, yes, sir.
That's the brick building.
Yes, sir.
That's where he is.
We have 10 locations in 10 different counties. That's our location in Wakulla County. Again, we see a majority of our patients are slide fee patients there. That helps a great deal to be able to have a little bit more money to our staff, those kind of things.
So tell us, what does that mean? That means they don't have insurance, or?
Yeah, they're uninsured.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where would they be treated if your organization did not exist? What would happen to the bulk of your patients?
They would be going to the hospitals most likely.
To the emergency room.
To the nursery, yeah. In Florida,
We would probably be transporting them.
very, very possibly. And the whole idea of what we do is we're a medical home. We're a primary care home. You have your own private physician that you see. That's your doc, that he knows you. That's what we're trying to do for those people.
And where's the bulk of your funding come from?
A federal grant and also the revenues that we generate for seeing patients. And here in Panacea, we probably got about 18%, 18% private insurance, probably about 30 or 40% Medicaid, and a very few Medicare. But when half the patient mix is slide fee and they're paying anywhere from $10 to $30 for the doctor, that's who we're seeing, because they don't have anywhere else to go but the emergency room. I used to work as a lobbyist and government affairs person for the association that represents all the health centers in Florida. The way that I would tell a legislator is, Representative Thomas, you represent the state of Florida and you have the checkbook for Medicaid. Medicaid mom with a 2-year-old with an ear infection It's either going to go to the hospital and you're going to write a $1,200 check, or they go to my health center and you're going to write a $100 check. Check you want to write.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality of it. And we've got data. I can give you more data than you would ever want to see, but we are a very cost-effective provider.
Are most of your clients in Panacea or countywide?
All over the place. Yep. Wherever there's people that are uninsured. We have people that walk there. We have people that drive the golf cart there. One of my locations recently, we realized a farmer drove the tractor to get to the doctor. But yeah, we see, that's one of the things, we don't turn away anybody when it comes to their inability to pay. We're still going to see them.
So can you explain very simply, when the government is simple, let's explain what happens with the $10,000 and let's explain what happens with staff.
Okay.
Yep.
Being as brief as I can, when Governor Bush was the governor, the Medicaid program was having real problems. It was exploding. In Florida, it's very unique, as it is in most other states in the South, because this has much more of an international flavor than most southern states. But they came up with the idea, what was called the 1119 waiver, that would allow the federal government to match the Medicaid program. Medicare is a federal program, it's all federal dollars. Medicaid's a state program. Governor Bush was looking for some way to constrain the growth. Couldn't stop it, but at least slow it down. They came up with this that provided a larger portion of federal dollars that the state of Florida was sending to D.C. and not getting back. That was also helping there as far as the budget was with the legislature. But this program allows local governments, city or county, to make a contribution to this, that we are able to show we have local partners and buy-in, and that helps us grow the practice and provide services to more people.
So the $10,000 is from whom? Wakulla County.
Wakulla County?
And then what are we going to do with that? We're going to turn that over to ACA?
Yes, there's a letter of agreement that I've sent to staff that is a contract, it's an agreement between the county and the state. They will, in fact, for all practical purposes, show this to the federal government that, look, Wakulla County gave us $10,000, and that draws that return that, I can't remember the exact percentage, but basically it turns it into a...
Where does the money sit?
All of that with ACA.
All that money sits with ACA. So I come to you, I'm uninsured, anybody can use this program, but how do they get paid? From ACA or from you or from us?
You send the money to ACA.
Yep.
ACA does the transaction, then it's held, and it takes about 60 days, and then it's sent back to the health center, to our company.
Okay.
And we're going to be spending those dollars, and I can have my CFO write your report exactly how those dollars.
So once the money leaves Wakulla County, goes to ACA, Wakulla County is basically a letter of support. There's that kind of a letter of support, obviously, when we send the letter of agreement. And then we are completely out of it, except for the benefit of the community is served larger than they would be if we hadn't made this investment.
Yes, ma'am.
It's just that simple. There's no staff involvement.
Okay, we get a copy of their audit?
It's going to be a little bit more complicated than that. We have not had the letter of agreement reviewed by legal yet, and it looks familiar to one we have dealt with before regarding our PEMT program, which is some supplemental funding for EMS department. And so there's going to be some details on staff's end to work out, because as the letter of agreement is written in now, I am not confident that Heather is going to be comfortable with it, and so there may need to be some working with the agency to get an agreement finalized, and then that will have to come back to you separate from a budget proceeding, just in a regular board meeting for approval once we get to that point. Now, that being said, this $10,000 is basically got a placeholder in the budget. So if something comes about and we can't work out with a letter of agreement that we're comfortable with, we could just, at your direction, just stroke a check directly to the Wakulla Teen Center, which is typically how we do some of our other nonprofit agencies. They issue us an invoice, I pay them what's been approved in their budget, and some of our agencies are reimbursement, like Wakulla County Beautiful. They pay their stuff up front, and then they send me proof that they've paid it, and here's invoices, here's cancel checks. So we could work this out in a different way, because right now I'm having briefly reviewed that letter of agreement. I'm not comfortable that it is something that would be able to be adopted by the board in its current form.
Are we asking other nonprofits to show us their audit or their
Yes,
budget?
they are required to submit a mission statement, board of directors, when their meetings are, all kinds of things that are in your administrative regulation.
Audit more than just.
They're financial, but now,
Subject to federal audit requirements, right? Because you have to have federal funds.
and
Like the
I,
regional planning council or us.
yes, I have a copy of it if you want to see it.
I'm just saying they're subject to the federal standard for auditing.
Yes, and they have submitted all the required documentation, but what I'm saying is this is not a typical way we would handle a nonprofit agency funding because of the third-party ACA being involved. I'm not saying we can't work it out, but we still have some legwork to do. But this placeholder for the $10,000 is in the proposed budget.
Okay,
So that's the most important thing, I think, at this point.
exactly.
But if we cut a check directly to him, he loses his match.
That's correct.
But let me be very clear. I understand your concerns. However, this has been going on for 16 years, and 56 of the 67 counties in Florida are doing this.
Okay.
So we can work it out, what'd you say? We haven't all dealt with heads.
Sovereign immunity. Sovereign immunity.
We can work it out, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. I have a feeling that everybody will be in touch again.
Any other information, please let me know.
Thank you.
Are all the other nonprofits subject to an audit of some sort?
It depends on the size of the organization.
Greg's about to die back.
Greg, do you need to say something?
I just have a question.
Please come up.
I believe they presented a year ago,
They did.
They did, yeah,
and we missed the deadline.
right.
Right.
That's why that didn't happen, so I was gonna ask what the deadline was.
It's September 30th, I believe. That's correct. I'm looking at Michelle.
Okay, so the other nonprofits are all subject to audit requirements? Is that correct?
Depending on where they receive the rest of their funding, yes, but like Wakulla County Beautiful, they don't go through a full audit each year, but they have a treasurer, and your administrative regulation allows for David's discretion to review the financial reports they submitted and say, yes, we can see what you're doing.
So we have some sort of control over it?
Yes, they have to, there's about 7 different things that they are required to submit, and then we review them, and then if they've met that threshold for submitting the documentation, then we program it in the budget and bring it to you to
I'm just
adopt.
trying to work in my mind some way to differentiate between every single request. Again, the Men's Club is a nonprofit. We have meetings. We have officers. So I can come request funding from the county?
You can, if you demonstrate a public purpose that the board sees value in having in our community, then you could approve it. If you can't demonstrate that public purpose and that public need that it's meeting, then as the board, you can say, no, we're not going to fund it.
Or another good example is Florida Wild Mammal Association.
Florida Wild Mammal.
Chris could come in here and ask for $20,000 because they take care of injured wildlife. And
Same thing. If they can demonstrate a need that the board feels is important and needed in our community, then as commissioners and you see the public purpose and you agree with it, then you fund it. If not, then you don't.
you know me, I just hate it being that
I understand, and
arbitrary. There's no standard we can look at and say, do they meet this standard?
Well, then we have to change the AR. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that if it's not gonna be right across the board, then change the AR.
I agree
Have
100%.
you read it?
No,
Okay, that's the starting point.
but I'm getting the gist of it.
Okay.
Apparently, if you format, that's all you gotta do.
That do a great service and serve the community well.
That's right.
And we could spend our entire budget just giving it to them.
That's right.
That wouldn't make sense.
That's right. That's exactly my point.
And I think up until this point, you only had 4, and now there's 6. And so we're definitely going down the road that we just amended that AR, I think 2 years ago. We can bring that back and propose to kind of limit that, like we can cap it at we're only gonna fund 10 agencies, first come, first serve, whatever it is, if you want that administrative regulation to come back before you.
Make sure if the taxpayers are gonna pay for it, the taxpayers have some sort of hand in it, either a federal or whatever the audit standard is, or we have, something, not just say, here's $10,000, thank you for asking.
I appreciate your commitment.
Taxpayer money.
We look forward to you bringing them in.
I'll bring it back.
Wakulla Teen Center, you want to come on down? I'm sure after that you want to. Awesome.
I got football practice. All right, so my name is Jesse Ransom. I'm with the Wakulla Teen Center. I don't know if you guys heard about us and everything that we do. When it comes to the service of the community out here, the interest is the kids. That's what it's about. That's the future, and that's our foundation that we try to build on. Basically, at the Teen Center, what we do is we have a host of different programs that we implement. We have a writing program for like theatrists that we work with the Pavlov Trio. We have a Keep Wakulla Clean program where we're trying to organize and get everybody at least one day out the year to everybody just pick up one piece of trash. We also have a football agilities program. It's not exactly football practice, but it's agilities, teaching kids how to run and get everything underneath them. And so we'll implement these in some other classes also, but we'll implement these things in our community that's going to have a first-hand impression on what these kids think and what these kids know when they grow up. I know they have programs like the library and other things is going on, but I feel like we reach these kids in a different way than they can do, right? We have the arcade room, and so when the kids come, they can play the games, and also they get different lessons on just being team players and things like that of that nature. I know for some of you, this might not be the ideal thing to do, but what it will help us with in a lot of different ways is really give us a backbone, because to this point right now, everything that we do has just been from volunteers of individuals in our county already, right? So we never got a big grant or anything like that. So everything we do is pretty much doing off the muscle and backs of people that's already working in the county. So we thought it would be beneficial for everybody involved if we were to get something like this and where it can take us at.
So you don't receive any funding from any other state agencies or any other government agencies at all? We're your first ask, basically.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to be an idiot and sit up here and turn these down, but I am going to revise the administrative regulation where we have a standard we can follow. His cause is worthy. I'm sure there's at least 15 or 20 others that are just as worthy. Then we got to draw the line somewhere. And he's met the standard, like I've told 100 times, you don't like the standard, change it. So I'm going to change the standard, or at least ask y'all to change it. So I'm good with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that.
I think our criteria needs to be, if we don't give to any of these, does it cost us more somewhere else? Does it cost
Amen.
taxpayers more
I've already him standing here.
somewhere else?
He can work with two agencies that we have here, Parks and Rec. Tammy for Keep Wakulla Beautiful.
Library. Library, we've got some
Library.
community summer.
Yours is different because it's not subject to an audit, right? We have no control whatsoever over their budget or anything, right? Once we write this check, and that's not big on you, but once we write this check, that's gone.
That's correct.
Okay, that's the difference to me.
Have you considered partnering with the recreation department or the library or some?
And also the health department also with the tobacco prevention program.
Given you're working under their umbrella, which would be a much more interesting,
And we are open to all of those suggestions. Like we have no kind of,
We've got a lot of people right here in this room tonight that you can, or, this afternoon that we can hook you up with.
that's excellent. And I would love that. We will work with anybody,
Community center, for example, I mean,
of course, yeah.
plenty of ways to outreach. But like I said, you've met the standard we have today, so I'm not going to sit here and shoot myself in the head.
Well, thank you, Randy. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Yes. Would we like to go to We Care? You guys want to say anything today? Are you good? Or you want to do your presentation from last week? Remind Randy, 2 weeks ago?
This is a renewal from last year. I don't have any problem.
Okay.
2 weeks ago. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
The only thing I was sitting here thinking I wanted to say was that Dr. Keene is, we'll call it Urgent Primary Care and Diagnostic Center.
Is it in Panacea?
No.
Which is a separate location from Wakulla Medical Center, but Wakulla Medical Center is our largest referring partner in Wakulla County by
Was in
far.
Panacea.
So there's a way to kind of make that connection between Wakulla Medical Center and We Care Network.
Tanya? Look at Tanya nodding yes. Look at her.
So Wakulla Medical Center sends 95% of the patients in Wakulla County to We Care Network.
It may have been 15 years ago, but he was there.
And just to clarify for Randy, Wakulla Medical Center is in Panacea, and Wakulla Urgent Care is off of Eli Way, and Dr. King is in both of those.
How long ago was it?
15 years ago.
Just because I've been here longer than most doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no, I just wanted to make that connection between the two there. And the return to this community is saving that multi-$1,000 ER visit bill, which is the whole purpose of our program too. So that's the connection there with Wakulla and us. So we definitely need them as a partner as well as y'all. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. John Schaff, would you like to come talk about the senior center?
While he's passing that out, Madam Chairman, I want to point out exactly what your administrative regulation says. It is a copy of most recently filed IRS Form 990 and a copy of the most recent independent audit or compilation. And it also gives David discretion for small agencies like Keep Wakulla County Beautiful that don't have a full-on audit for them to submit a treasurer's report or something similar.
Okay.
Well, the King Center doesn't have an audit, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Senior Center?
No, the Teen Center.
The new request.
I'll let you know after he's finished.
I mean, I'm not picking it to death, but I'm just saying I want to look at the regulation. Later, not today.
Again, I apologize. Go ahead, Mr. Schaff.
Well, our increase, our request for an increase is, if you look at the little handouts I just gave y'all, the one that's got Wakulla Senior Center at the top of it is basically our monthly expenses on fuel. Just this last month, I had to go in and sign a check for $8,300 to pay for gasoline for 1 month. Where our ridership is way up. We got a larger county, and we don't need to talk about fuel prices. And they may start, trending back down. It goes all over the place. But we started putting these numbers together in April. Most of last year, from what y'all gave us extra last year, went into increased fuel costs last year. We're in the hole from last year. There's no way we can really catch up. So we actually did ask for a couple $1,000s more in April than we anticipated using, but then fuel jumped up to $5 a gallon, and we spend it all. We get a lot of our fuel at the county farm. We're looking for other places to get it, but it's just it's all fuel and ridership going up.
So does that mean you get it at our cost when you get it from the county?
Yes.
So you are getting,
Tank charge, there's
Yes.
all marked up.
When y'all have it, and you don't always have it.
yeah.
Right, when we go other places, and the other two printouts that I gave you, as you know, we serve meals every day at the senior center.
Ambulances. Well, then, no, you shouldn't say we don't have fuel. We do prioritize public safety vehicles over senior citizens. I'm assuming if we're going to run low or something.
We haven't.
During a hurricane.
Yeah, during a hurricane, yeah.
Right, during a hurricane.
I was told that, and I don't know what the conditions were, and I don't try to micro that much, but you're talking about when we had the hiccup, that was a COVID related. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. There was something. I don't know
we had
what all the
One time when the refineries were hacked, everybody.
Yeah, and the refineries were hacked and COVID, and it was, everybody was trying to get by. Everybody was going crazy.
Somebody starts a rumor, and everybody lines up at Walmart and takes all the gas.
But again, and on the other side of it, which is, it's important, everything's important, but these other two handouts I gave you, if you just look at the top of the one that
it's got a purple highlight. Basically, it condenses the information on these 2 pages. We were spending in food in 2021 an average of $2,135 a month. So far this year, we're spending $3,106. And again, it's increased cost of food and the number of people that come to the center to eat. Our population's increasing.
Keeping up with the numbers better.
And if fuel prices go down, which I'm sure they will go down some, this money will be used in other ways to benefit seniors.
Yeah, and if they go down,
Say, I wouldn't tie your ass to fuel prices, because if they go down, we can come back and say, well,
well, but I don't think that's would be illegitimate. It's not a one-way street. I hope that next year that I can come back and say we only need $95,000 or some other number next year. But
I know the people you serve are very happy that you're there. Even Virgie, all the way from Smith Creek, comes up there.
money well spent. So I have no problem with it. All right. And we do the audits every year now. We've just started doing that. The center's never done an audit before in its history until last year, and we just are finishing up our second audit
I have
this
a
year.
copy of that,
Mm-hmm.
so that,
Okay.
that's what I'm looking for.
Any questions?
No, sir. Not for me.
All right, thank you.
Tammy, you want to come up? Got about 15, 12-ish more minutes, would that be about right? And you still want,
Yeah, you'll need to leave time for y'all to ask questions.
Yeah.
We've got one more thing, so.
I wasn't really prepared. I was told to come in case there were questions, but keep Wakulla County beautiful. Tammy Nason. Most of you have participated with us in one fashion or another, one event or another, but the main reason for our ask is FDOT used to fund about half of our programs. It was a grant through FDOT that went to keep Florida beautiful, and then was divided out between all the affiliates. It did not pass in the budget, so Keep Florida Beautiful and all the affiliates all lost their funding. That was approximately $16,000 that we lost, and we used those funds. We've already missed one conference. We have a couple more conferences coming up because there's a state conference and a National Keep America Beautiful conference. We do the Adopt a Road program, costs of things like the signposts, which the Road and Bridge Department has helped immensely in picking up some of that. But we usually do provide those and provide all the signage and everything. Take the education programs into the school when we're able to, do the river cleanup, the hazardous waste day.
so clean up.
Coastal cleanup, which is coming up next month. And the forest cleanup are our biggest ones. Whenever there's a need that is brought to our attention, like we recently had the National Sands, where Road and Bridge brought out a dumpster, and Mr. Thomas and Mr. Edwards were both there to assist, and we picked up, I forget, like 10,000
pounds.
of asphalt.
Randy was there too, so it was Mike.
Randy was there.
I'm sure Greg was there.
No, Greg wasn't there. He
What?
didn't know that time. But
I left my back there.
it was a fire. We were sore afterwards. I was anyway. But I'm
Didn't have a
glad to
trident?
answer any questions if anybody has any. But I think y'all are pretty familiar with.
And I apologize for Quincy putting you on the spot like this.
That's okay. I'll get you.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, thank you. Anybody questions? Good? Sharon?
It's good to see you all again. It's been a few years.
We like it that way, not you personally.
Exactly. We don't want-
You're here, we got trouble. But we appreciate you.
So I do have a new name. I'm Sharon, still council, always council, but Caraway. That's the Tyler. So I'm still getting used to it. In fact, went up to Randy a minute ago and said she was copyright. Some of you know this. My family's owned property in Wakulla County owned it since 1853, but we've been here since 1828. And so I loved hearing all this, although our 100 acres that my family owns now is going to go up a little bit more. I have to pay a little bit more. That's okay. It's all good. But Red Cross has been a proud partner with Wakulla County for many, many years. Just this past fiscal year, and one of the things, Randy, Commissioner Harris, one of the things that we do, you ask about return on investment. So the money that we give to our clients goes directly back into the economy here. So this past fiscal year, our fiscal year goes from July 1st to June 30th. We gave $11,972 in direct funds to clients whose home had been affected by fires. It's probably 90% fires. There have been some trees. We've had some weird weather with trees, homes that have been damaged. Again, it was really interesting to hear the fire report because I can't tell you how important that partnership is that we have with them. We've also, coming out of COVID, we're back in the installing free smoke alarms in homes. So we've done 34 so far. When we do that, we do it in partnership. Sometimes Massachusetts, we did it with the volunteer fire department down there several years ago after we lost the two kids. I think that was in 18 or 19, 2019. Anyway, but we also sit down with the families and help them understand the best way to get out of a burning house, teach them home fire safety, and try just to make them understand the importance of having working smoke alarms. You're 50% more likely to get out of a fire alive if you've got them. I'm happy to answer any questions. Hopefully, if I come see you, it'll be just to brag on our partnership and not to be talking about hurricanes and fun shelter.
I think your organization is an important part of any hurricane response. I've sat with you all a couple times at the emergency management office.
We're gonna have a generator for the next one that comes around. Last time that was a challenge.
They are a good thing, but we've got new staff. I don't know if Jen's here, or not.
We met them.
Yeah, so we've got new staff. Could not be happier with our new disaster staff. We've got some really gung-ho folks that are going to be good partners, really trying to build up our base here, because we don't want it to be Tallahassee coming, and we want it to be Wakulla County Red Cross. That's really important to us. And some of you have come to some of our events. Quincy, you've come and helped support us, and we really appreciate it because, we're talking about government funding. We do not get government funding.
But you're mandated.
Pardon me?
But you're mandated, correct?
We are mandated by Congress to do what we do to respond during disasters, but it is an unfunded mandate, as y'all are all too familiar with. But I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
I don't think so. Does Randy, you fully understand what Red Cross does?
I'm good, man.
So we, thank you very much. That's it, correct? Unless we're gonna do the,
Are there any questions that y'all need to be us? You talking?
I'm just getting off this page so that now we can move on to, medical examiner, are they here? No?
No,
You moved those because,
required.
got it. Let's roll to questions or comments that you want to do. Commissioner Kemp, you want to talk some more about your three things?
I do, and I understand it because I talked with David about this. I talked to Brandy, I understand the cost of doing business with everything that is going up. We made so many adjustments this past year, and the only thing that I'm asking is let's not make these couple things this year. I understand a lot of the other stuff. I understand the cost of doing business. I understand how pipe and everything's going up, but people hurting. People's having a hard time. We survived 8 years of not doing this. For the last 8 years until we raised the millage rate, I think putting it off a year is not going to hurt us. We're only looking at 43,501 and 56,800 on another, but we're looking at saving, people $117 a year total for all of it. Well, no, taking that, about $170. Yeah, so, I understand.
$7 a year?
Yes, for the MSB.
From this MSBU.
Yes.
A month, $7 a month.
No.
No, a year.
A year. Because of the increase, right, I'm sorry. I just feel like that I think that we survived it before. I'm not saying that I understand that the CPI, I get that, I understand it. I just feel like, with everything going up, I can't just keep going up on everything else with the taxpayers.
Anybody have anything to add?
I'm fine with the budget the way it is.
Yeah, it's tough, but everything is going up. Everything's going up.
Unfortunately, we got to make tough decisions.
$7 a year is not, that's a fig leaf.
So, one thing I'd like to see that maybe the property appraiser can provide. So I know that, let's say value, an individual person's home goes up 6%, and you're limited to the 3% cap, okay? And let's say this year it doesn't go up at all. It's possible that they would still increase 3% because of the compression that wasn't captured in prior years, correct? Well, what would be interesting if we could see, when we've got a figure for what this proposed budget gives us in new money. What I'm curious of is how much of that new money would exist even if we didn't have an increase in valuations, because you're capturing that compression that you were limited in capturing from prior years. That makes sense? Okay.
My home value, my house value went down. When the market crashed, my assessed value went down. So now it's going to keep going 3% a year, no matter what, I'm assuming, till it catches back up at some point.
No, the 3%, when people get their trims, there's going to be a portability down there. The amount of dollars that if they move to another home of equal value, they could take that with them to their new home. That's where the 3% comes in. Now, if you're a new home, you bought a house this year, next year you're going to be assessed for that house, but there's no inflation next year. Let's be crazy. There's no inflation next year, and so your house stayed the same value next year. It won't go up 3% just because it could. It all depends on the assessment.
Well, let's use this for an example. Let's say 2 years ago, my taxable value was $100,000, okay? And it went up 6% to 106, okay?
Your assessed value
taxable. But let's just say the taxable value went up 6%.
It couldn't, because your taxable value can only go up.
I'm sorry, without the 3% cap. Yeah, so the assessed value went up 6%, so my taxable value can only go up 3%. And then, now this year, it doesn't go up at all. So I'm still, my assessed value is still 106. And so my taxable value would go up this year, even though my assessed value hasn't changed.
That's correct, that could happen.
That would be curious if we could see the difference in that number, because when we're looking at the amount that we're receiving based on existing homes, some of that's going to happen even if you didn't increase, not you don't increase values. Even if the values didn't increase, some of that's going to still be money off of those existing homes.
Most of it.
Right. That would be interesting to see that delta there. What's the difference in that number and the people that are paying more because the values did go up?
Ed's got that number with him, I think.
I will attempt to get that number.
Answer. Greg James, want to say anything?
Let me get back to you on that one.
Just here for questions. Lisa, anything? Anybody else up here, anything to add?
I've got, we're running out of time now, but I'll ask Louie and Kelly to hang around, and during my time, they have a proposal, as we try to keep up with everything that's ever changing in fire rescue. We need to have a discussion with you guys about that. We're waiting until
At the board meeting? At the board meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's always about spending money.
Brandy?
And also, if there's any direction that come out of this workshop in the regular board meeting, I would like to discuss that as well under his time.
No, say that again so we're clear. If there's any...
If you have a consensus or any direction regarding any of the rates that we have talked about today, there's something you want us to change, do differently, if we could get that direction in the regular meeting, that would be great.
My consensus is to proceed with what we got.
What was, the MSBU, what was that total? Did I see that a while ago?
Like $44,000 from the increase
No, not from
$50.
the increase, the total, what we were carrying over. Maybe I saw it and maybe I didn't. What was the total that was a carryover from the MSBU?
I don't know what you mean by carryover.
Well, I mean, what's the total fund for a year is what I'm saying is, what is that total fund a year?
About $3 million.
About 3 million?
About 350 of that is capital, so 2.6 for the operating.
Page 7.
Okay, that's what I was trying to look at.
How does do they get ones that sales tax money also from the?
Remember, this is the year we instituted the capital capital component of the MSBU. So we slough off 11.1% of the MSBU, and that is restricted
Why
for
we
capital.
raised the fire.
That's right, why we went to 149.
And once it's sales tax.
That's right.
That for other funds.
That's
Well,
right.
we use it primarily because we lost the jail bed revenue, the ICE revenue, which now they have to buy vehicles for the sheriff's department out of 1 cent.
Is that it? Everybody done? Finished?
Said quarter till, right?
Yep, I said a quarter till. Okay, we'll call this meeting to an end.